up, everybody? Welcome to Learning the Basics with me, 3 p.m., 3P Music. We are here, and we're going to learn about how to build coasters today, and it's going to be a really basic tutorial. We're not going to cover a whole bunch of the advanced stuff. That'll be for a future episode, but what we're going to do is, again, if you've watched my path placing tutorial previously, you will know that we're just placing down standard paths, and we have railings on right now, which is fine. But just to get us into the park here. Okay, so obviously first thing first is let's talk about the coasters. So the first screen you've got is obviously your blueprints that come up. The blueprints are pre-built, pre-designed, pre-layout coasters that already have ratings and track designs and blah, 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 which are great if you want to just put down a coaster quick and just get your customers or get your guests on those rides and start making some money. But we're in this game because it's designing and building your own custom creations, right? So first thing is you click on the custom tab and it's going to open up a window for a whole bunch of different types of coasters. And I kind of explain this when I'm talking to people, like I was talking at PAX last weekend, is when you're looking at each one of these coasters, you almost have to look at it as like a challenge within a game, like a boss or an enemy or a puzzle to figure out, because the coasters themselves, so they're, trains that sit on tracks for the most part, or sit on top of tracks or around tracks or under tracks or whatever, but they all kind of behave differently in regards to how they move and also how your riders are going to react to them. Some of the coasters you're going to want to have really tight turns and corners and kind of whip them around their chair because that's more exciting. Other vehicle types, if you do that, you will snap their neck and kill them. Not in the game, but in real life. So you kind of have to take these things and these design concepts or ideas into consideration as you're building. So what we're going to do is one of the easiest ones to start out with, in my opinion, is the wooden coaster. Just the basic. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's just the basic wooden coaster, but you can do a lot of really cool things with it. Plus, it's very easy to just kind of get started and get building with this thing. Okay, so once you click on the coaster you want to put down, it's going to bring up this station, and you can have the train going its default area. Again, we're not going to cover too much with the advanced tool sets that are in here, but we are going to cover some of the basics that you probably would want to know if you were just getting started to play this or wanted to build your own coaster. And one of the first things that I struggled to figure out was, number one, how do I rotate this? Because scroll wheel isn't doing it, holding it down isn't doing it, right button just deletes it, left button obviously is going to place the station down on the screen. But what we want to do is actually rotate it to go the other direction. So by pressing the Z key, that's going to move it in a 45-degree snapped rotation. Or you can hold down Z and then with your mouse move it to the left or to the right, and that's going to allow you to have precision control. And if you messed up and now it's at a weird angle, just right-click, go back into your station, and it's going to default back to its original setting. So we're going to have it start out going this way. And one thing you also may want to choose or to select is your station and how you want your station to have people come into the coaster and also to leave the coaster. So if we rotate the camera around real quick and we look and see the arrows that are on the ground, we'll see that everyone's going to be boarding the trains on this station as well as exiting them on the exact same side, which is fine if that's how you want to build the coaster, but this actually gives you some more functionality before you even place this down as far as how you want to have your guests get on and leave the coaster. So how you can change that is down here in the right corner. You've got 4 different options. Either they're going to enter both and exit on the left, they're going to enter on the left, exit on the right, or they're going to both enter and exit on the right, or they're going right and left, or they're going to enter both on the right hand side. So again, it's your choice of how you want to place it down. I typically, just because I prefer it, I like to have the riders go on one way and then off the other way. So that's what we're going to do here with this today. And we're just going to rotate that around to how we want it, again, pressing the Z key. And we're going to keep the station, I think, again, this is for the basic tutorial. We're going to keep it on the ground. But if you want to know how to move the object up, it's the same way you do with any other item in the game, and that's holding down the shift key, left shift, and dragging your mouse up or down. You may also want to enable in the settings menu here really quick to help you with building your coaster, your global vertical snapping. This is going to make it much easier for you if you're just starting out, and I'll show you why. So if you enable that, and then you go back in here and you hold down shift, you're going to notice that it's snapping to different levels versus it having that really, you could pretty much put it wherever you want it in the space. But this way, it's going to be a lot easier to build and to design your coaster. So I would recommend, if you're just starting out, keep that feature enabled. It does help with building your coasters. All right, so we're ready to place it down. Let's press the left mouse button. That's going to place your station down. You've confirmed this is where the station goes. And you're going to notice a couple things that your screen has changed, and it might be a little overwhelming at first, and you're saying, holy crap, what are all these things? We're not going to pay attention to more than 80% of them on the screen right now. We're just going to look at the basics. So the basics are going to be right here on the screen in front of you, and that is the little bubbles that appeared. The one with the ruler, if you hold down your left mouse button while you're hovering over the ruler and keep it clicked down, and then you drag up or down, that's going to increase or decrease the size of that segment or that track section. So if you want to have a really short piece there, really short like turn or something, you could do that and place the object down. If you want to have a really wide sweeping turn, make the track length longer to give you a greater turn radius or ratio. And then what you can do is, once you've decided on what you want to have as far as your first track piece and how you want your first element to look, you're probably going to want to start it off right out of the gate to go right up a chain lift, which is what it actually defaults you on. So if you look down here in your tools menu, you've got a few different options, and the first thing that it's selected on is the chain lift. So obviously that's going to pull your train up. And then, of course, you've got your standard track, which is without a chain so that your coaster can ride on the track. The other options you've got are drive tires. The drive tires are little wheels that spin and move your coaster along at a slower speed, but they don't really, they're not going to lift your coaster up into the air up a chain lift or up a lift hill. So you want to use these as more of a utility, like coming into your station at the end if you need a little bit of speed and you don't want to put down another chain lift. You can put down some drive tires. So again, covering just the basics. Friction brakes are going to slow the train down, and trim brakes are going to be, you can use these pretty much wherever you want, but they are more expensive and they are more versatile, but they are more expensive. So just keep that in mind. If you're not playing in your sandbox mode and you're in challenge or career mode, they will cost more to use that, to use this type of brake. And then block brakes. We're going to cover that in a later tutorial because it does take a little bit of understanding of how this works and what it does. But long story short, block brakes are going to allow you to have multiple trains or multiple cars on the track at the same time and allow more people to ride your ride, which in turn, of course, is going to increase your money because more people will be riding and not waiting in line and complaining. All right, so that's out of the way. This is your basics this is your basic tools down here. We're not really paying attention to the other stuff. Some of it you're going to look at and realize that it's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, you've got the ability to change your color down here of your track piece. You can also recolor it at the end. Again, I'm not going to cover all that, but just know the undo feature is available, Control Z, if you make a mistake. So that's a great tool to have, and you will probably end up using it quite a bit. All right, so let's get started. What we're going to do, first track piece, is we're going to have this go directly up a chain lift, and this is pretty much how the majority of all wooden coasters start, for the most part. And because basically we have to get this train some momentum and some velocity, and the only way we're going to do that is by bringing it up a hill and then dropping it down. So again, we already saw the ruler and what that's going to do, which is increase or decrease our track segment size. If you click on the other bubble, which is directly below it, you're going to notice two arrows, up or down. I will let you guess what that's going to do, and you guessed it right. If you hold down your left mouse button and drag up, it's going to lift up and or down. Now you're seeing that my track piece is snapping at an 11.25 degree angle, increment, and that is because I have angle snap on, which I covered in my previous tutorial. Highly recommend using this when you're building a coaster or paths. It just makes things a little bit easier to control and a little bit more symmetrical, and you can get better lines and better proportions of your build because you're not trying to find the exact angle that you were at, and it just it's much easier to use. So that's what I recommend. Now, to place down your first piece, you can do this in a number of different ways. It depends if you enjoy using a keyboard or if you enjoy using a mouse, or a combination of both. I typically will just click down here, which is the build button, or I will left mouse click. Left mouse click is going to place down our object. So I want to drag this up at about a 60-degree angle. We're going to have a pretty steep lift hill initially. Left mouse click, bring it up to, as you can see, I've got my height markers on. Height markers are visible down here by just clicking that, and that's just to give you a frame of reference of just how high you're building this coaster. How high can you go? You can go really, really high, but you got to keep in mind that you have ratings for your ride, and if your ratings are not good, your guests will not ride your ride. So keep that in mind if you're trying to play money or trying to play this game to win money. If you're just in Sandbox having fun, trying to make the craziest coaster you can think of in your imagination, probably not a concern because you're not going to need the money. But we are in Sandbox just as an example to show you how to do this. So taking this up, 160-ish feet. Or 180 feet rather. And then once we've got this kind of topped off on the crest there at the top, what we're going to do is then you'll notice we've got some new icons that appeared. Some that are familiar, like we just had, which was the ruler icon and the up and down arrows. But now we've got a left and right, and we've also got this kind of weird rotating arrow thing. And we're going to cover that, but not right now, because we're just going to focus on the tools that we've already learned. And now we've got to build that velocity, that momentum for our riders. What we're going to do is hold down again the left mouse button on this, drag down. We're going to create probably not as steep of a downward hill. We're going to go into a 56-degree angle. And we're going to go down, 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 and here's where it can get fun. So you can again adjust your track size. So just as an example, if you were to go with a really little track piece here, you're going to notice that it finishes the hill very quickly. And what that's going to do is if you're thinking about going down a hill like on a bike or in a car or on a coaster, if you've ridden a coaster before. You're going to get that feeling in the stomach like you're being pressed into your seat down here. And the shorter that distance is, the shorter that moment is going to last. Now, if you make the track piece a little bit longer, you're going to notice that the hill kind of comes down in this sweeping pattern, which again is going to give you a feeling of that weight that's being pushed into the seat and that thrill of you coming down to the bottom of the hill and then going into the next element. And the next element typically in a wooden coaster is going to be into a second hill. Not a lift hill, but just a second hill. And it's going to have to be smaller than your initial hill because obviously we have lost some energy as we've come out of this hill now and transitioned into this other one. So we want to have it tall enough though to where it's still going to be exciting and we can still continue this momentum. So 180 feet for the first hill, 125 feet for the second hill. That should not be a problem to clear. And again, you can play with the track size if you wanted to have a smaller transition here or a larger one on this side. Play around, feel free to experiment, but we're going to show you what those things do at the end once we start testing. And if you're asking, can you test it now while it is while you're playing or building? Yes, you can, but not when it's paused. So make sure that if it's not working, your game's not paused, and just unpause it at the bottom or press the P as in pause key on your keyboard. Okay, so now we've got our coaster train is going to be going down this hill 180 feet ish down to, so it's about 173 foot drop, and then it's going to go up about 100 and, what is that, 19 feet, 18 feet, I can't do math, and then it's probably going to still have some speed. Not going to have a lot of speed, but it's going to have some speed. So now we got to decide, what do we want this to do? Typically at this point, the coaster will do some kind of a turn, or you could have it do even another hill into a smaller one. But we're going to go with a pretty standard basic design because that's what this tutorial is about. So first thing first is we have to think about is when you're going around this corner, do you want to have your head still on your shoulders or not, right? So that's a good question to have. And the typical answer to that is yes. And the reason you want to have your head on your shoulders is you want to be alive. So go ahead and we're going to grab this little icon up here that turns into like a goalpost. Or if you're looking at the roller coaster from the front view, you will notice that it looks like a track in the center of this item right there. You got the two rails on the side and then the track support underneath. Primarily it's designed like a steel track, but that's all right. And now what we can do is we can move our mouse to the left or to the right. Again, I've got angle snap on, which is going to allow us to bank that corner. Now, when you think about a banked corner, think about driving on the expressway or just driving in the car or riding in a car. If you go around an expressway corner and it's not banked, your car will most likely lose control, roll over, flip, whatever, because it's going too fast and it doesn't have the correct angle of trajectory coming into that corner to be safe. So you got to keep that in mind. And when you're going around a corner, you don't want it to bank too hard, too fast. You want it to kind of build. So we're going to place down the first piece at 11.25, and then we're going to go to like a 22, and then we can go a little bit bigger, maybe here to like a 45 degree. Keep it at a 45 degree, and now we're going to start to level it out again, and we're going to bring this out to like a 0 degrees there. Rotate again to 0 degrees to again straighten out your track. And then we can go ahead and start our next element, which we're going to bring it into another drop here. And we're going to have it go down to about there. And it's going to be a smaller transition here because we want it to be a little bit different of a feeling, a little bit more intense of a hill. Again, back up. We're going to do another hill here. It's going to be smaller than the hill before it because we want it to clear the top. Whoops, I don't want breaks there. I want to keep my regular, make sure I didn't put that down an accident. Okay, and then left click to place it, and then we can actually make this one a little bit more steep. So again, we're just changing the design slightly of our hills every time we build it because it's going to give our riders a completely different experience every time that they go up a hill or down a hill, because you don't want it to be the exact same thing over and over again. The ride would be extremely boring. One thing to keep in mind is, as far as design for your coaster, is I would highly recommend going onto YouTube or Google and grabbing some video of famous or local amusement parks and their wooden coasters and their design and their layout. And I would watch them and I would see how they run and how they operate and kind of some of the special features or some of the things that stick out the most to you as you're watching those videos. You'll see that the majority of wooden coasters are very much built around and inside themselves, and they go up and down and through through their own track design and their own track layout. You want to maximize the space. You don't want to have too much of the ride being all over your map. You want to kind of keep it within these boundaries. So now let's set the boundaries, which are it's going to live in and around this area for the duration of our ride. We don't want to have it go all the way, over here and then over here. I mean, you could, but for all intents and purposes, we're trying to keep this a little bit realistic with this design and this build, and keep it pretty basic because we don't want to have too much stuff going on with this first tutorial. And again, we're just mimicking again the design of what we've done already, which is just to build lifts and drops. And we're doing the exact same thing, and again, changing the size of our track and also changing the elements. So now what we can do is we've got a little bit of an angle of going down. So it's gonna go up this hill, and then we're gonna start it to immediately, but not at the speed or the intensity of these other drops. But we're gonna start this kind of banked decline into this corner. So it's gonna feel like you're being thrown around this corner, and you're being pushed to the side of your ride. But we're going to kind of hug the inside of this wall, and I want to make this track piece a little bit shorter because I want to come around like this. It's going to be a little tight there at the end, but that's all right. And I want to kind of ride the sides of this coaster just like this, and we're gonna bring it in a little bit. How do I want to do this? I think I'm gonna bring it like this, 45-degree angle, and then we're gonna bring it to 0. And again, tilting this to make it 0 degrees. And now we can go ahead and do kind of the same thing again, but this time we're going to change how we do our hills. They're going to be a little bit different than how we did them previously, a little bit wider of or a little bit more airtime over this hill. So as you go up here and you transition, it's going to feel like you're floating a little bit more out of your seat. You probably won't be going as fast as we were in the other hills, obviously, because the hills aren't that big, but these we could probably do relatively the same size or just a smidge smaller or a smidge bigger than the hill before it. It's up to you and your design preference and when you start building this and how you want the look or layout of your coaster. Again, we're just covering the basics here. You don't have to do this exact same design on your end, but this is a good way to start out and a good way to learn how to build a coaster layout, especially a wooden coaster layout, because they're pretty awesome. They aren't the most exciting necessarily as far as the older ones. It's a lot of just up and down and around corners, and it's kind of boring. But there's a reason that people love wooden coasters, and that's because they're rough, they're raw, and it's a good time. It is a good time to be on a wooden coaster, that is for sure. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and now we're going to start to wrap this up because I want to bring this back around now into the final run. So what we're going to do is work our way back to our station because we need to get back to be able to get into get our guests back. We don't want them to be trapped out here forever. So for the ending, you can kind of get a little bit more creative and a little bit more intense because we're not going to be coming around here at the speeds that we were earlier in our build because we have been working our way from up here to down to a smaller area towards the ground. And we're going to go ahead and again adjust the banking a little bit on that side. And I like it because it's going to go right past here and then you're going to be like, oh, we're going to go right back over that coaster. And what we're going to do is kind of give a little bit of a shimmy here, a little bit of a shimmy and a shake. And I can either go under or over this track element. Looking at the track piece over here though, I'm feeling like it's going to be better to go over, but we're going to first even this out to a 0, and we're going to get this down to right as close as we can get it. So that's actually perfect. So 0 is exactly what we want to do. And then we're going to go ahead and place that. And then what I want to do is start to decelerate my coaster to bring it into the station. And how I'm going to do that is to put in some friction brakes, or I can use trim brakes. Again, remember, friction brakes are less expensive than your trim brakes. Both kind of do the same thing. Now, once you've selected the brake type that you want to use, it's important to know how they work or how to control them. So what it's going to do is it's going to work to slow your train down, and click on the utility settings menu here. What that's going to do is, and you know, I just realized if this thing is not, oh, I hope this is recording my full screen. It might not be. I just noticed on my recorder that my profile view might be scale to window, scale to output. Crap. I hope you can see everything on my screen. Let me try that. Hold on one second. Transform sugar and spice and everything nice. Canvas. Well, we'll have to look at the playback and see. If not, looks like we're gonna have to do this over again. Anyways, back to the build. All right, so as we're selecting our brake, we want to select how fast or how slow we want this to go. And you're saying, well, I don't really know how fast it's going through here. That's correct. You don't know how fast it's going through here yet because we haven't tested the car or tested the train yet to know. But it's a good rule of thumb to start it about halfway, 13, 14 miles an hour, just to kind of get it to slow down. And you can adjust your deceleration rate here if you want. And you can also select if you want a catwalk or not. We've got a catwalk around the whole track because most wood coasters have catwalk around them. If you take it off, you don't have the railings, and you just have the wood sides and the obviously the wooden supports. So There we go. We're going to put our brake run in there. And then our second brake run is going to slow it down even more. We're going to bring it down to about 8 miles an hour, but we're going to make this a little bit smaller, probably about half the size of our first brake run. And then we're going to bring it into our normal track type. And here you may want to turn off your catwalk because it's the end and it's different and it's fun. And we're just going to bring this down ever so slightly, make it a little bit bigger, and we're not going to give it a bank on this one, excuse me, because you are going to be coming into this corner quite slow out of that 8 mile an hour brake run. So once you've got your piece, I would start to have a small decline. And then there's a few ways that you can finish this coaster. You can either get as close as you want to your station and then lock it into place with this button, or you can just line it up to be roughly where it's at and hit this piece here. Now we want to actually get this to look a little bit better, so we're going to make that, we're going to pull it to the left by 1 so that it comes into the station here at a really nice angle. So it's going to go around, down, and then up this little hill here back into the station. So that is pretty much how you build a wooden coaster. And of course, no coaster is complete until you try it. Now, there's a few things that we're going to cover in the advanced option, such as what Smooth All and Smooth Banking does, as well as some of the other tools and utilities within the coaster tool. But I wanted to cover the basics now. So let's go ahead and give this a quick test. And one other thing to keep in mind before we test it is you can actually adjust the lift hill speed. And these little icons here on the left and right will allow you to select multiple tracks. So if you want to change or make edits or whatever, if once we get into the more advanced tutorial, this is how you would do it. And you can just use these arrows to drag. The open mouth is going to gobble up more pieces, so just keep that in mind. The open mouth is eating your coaster tracks like Pac-Man going along, and then of course Pac-Man going in reverse this way. So just keep that in mind. You do not have to select every track piece in order to change your lift hill speed. You can just select the first one. It will change all of your lift hill speed for the chain lift. And again, on your utility setting, it should already be there if you were already working on brakes, which we were just a few moments ago. We're going to just crank that up to probably 8 miles an hour because 4 it takes forever to get up the hill. Okay, so that is pretty much it. Let's test it and let's ride it and see how we did with our build. So here we go. And what you'll see on the right hand side as we're climbing the hill is the live data tool. A lot of the stuff on here you're not really going to be too necessarily knowledgeable on or understand too much about unless you understand lateral G-force, vertical and forward Gs. But what we are going to look at is more the excitement, fear, and nausea rating. And that's going to tell us a story about how our coaster's doing and how our guests are going to respond to the elements that we've built in our track. Obviously, the higher the number of excitement, the better. You want to keep fear kind of balanced. You want to have that in the green, and green is balanced, so it's right in the middle. You want it to be some scary parts and some not so scary parts, but mostly you want it to be a good balance of both. Your nausea rating, obviously the lower the nausea the better. You don't want people puking on your ride every time they ride it because that's just going to get really messy for everyone, so the lower the better. So once again, excitement level high, fear level average in the middle, and your nausea level to be kept very low. And again, this is a very basic track design. It's a very basic layout to get you started with how to build a wooden coaster, coming through our brake runs, slowing us down at a nice rate, and then dropping us down this little bit of a hill here back into the station. Give us a little bit of an excitement boost there just because we went down and up, and we're back into the station. And we're going to get our results. So hopefully we have all green ratings, which we do. So that is how you build a wooden coaster with 3 green ratings, without doing too much with editing and too much with any of the advanced settings. So hopefully this helped you. If not, I'm sorry if it didn't, but this should help you. And I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please like and subscribe and share and tell your friends. And yeah, appreciate your support and watching. Thank you. Bye.